Welcome to the Lyceum Fellowship Design Competition Symposium 2026. I'm Peter Vincent, current board chair of Lyceum Fellowship. Welcome to our symposium. The mission of the Lyceum is to advance the profession of architecture by engaging students in design and travel. And this year, we're celebrating our 40th annual student design competition. It's an amazing experience that we've had over these 40 years. Last night, we just held a reception in honor of this milestone event. Many of our former jurors, student winners, and faculty members attended the event, which was quite amazing. The Lyceum offers 3 competition prizes, travel grants, first prize of $15,000 for 3 months of travel abroad, $10,000 for second prize for 2 months of travel abroad, and $5,000 for third prize for 1 month of travel abroad, as well as a merit award as a certificate of recognition. And last, at the board's discretion, not by the jury that met today, but by the Lyceum board, a John McKee special prize is awarded on a case-by-case and annual basis. So it's not awarded every year, and it's based not just on the design achievement of a particular entry, but also their intentions to travel. So this year's competition was written by Teddy Cruz and Fonna of Studio Teddy Cruz and Fonna, entitled Spatializing Justice Building Blocks. And joined by our jury today, an esteemed jury who we thank very much for participating. Of course, Teddy and Fonna, Dr. Dana Cuff, Bill Moorish, and Lyceum's Molly Moore. So with that, I'd like to introduce Teddy and Fonna, who will discuss today the brief for this year.
Thank you so much. You know, it's been an honor to host the Lyceum Foundation and Student Fellowship here in San Diego during its 40th anniversary. And wow, what a competition it was. We received beautiful, robust propositions that, really reflect deep commitments, optimism, hope, and stretching the imaginative possibilities of what architecture can do to address so many problems that the world is facing right now. We were deeply inspired. We here in San Diego, Teddy and I, we inhabit a zone of conflict. All of our work is embedded in the communities that flank the international border between the United States and Mexico, between San Diego and Tijuana. And because our work is deeply embedded in this place, right, everything that we do is grounded in a research-based set of activities to really understand context, territory, histories, perceptions, ecologies, economies, social relations in this zone as a generative context for the work that we propose to do here. And we wanted to bring this sensibility into the brief to really, help everybody imagine, what architecture can do beyond just designing buildings. Not the building isn't, but the territory and the context, and making sense of that to really understand how architecture can change the world, how architecture can make things better, and make human life better. So the brief, the brief was open in terms of site, but regardless of where, the brief asked participants to really understand the conflicts that are embedded in a space, and to understand those conflicts as a tool for design. To really understand who the stakeholders are in this place. What are the jurisdictional lines? What are the histories? What kinds of histories of violence and injustice have happened in that space? And how that then becomes generative of thinking about propositions in a more holistic way. And so the brief was quite rigorous. You know, we asked participants to really drill down into conflicts, into the political and economic dynamics that needed to be addressed before one could begin designing a solution. And we asked participants to think about who needs to be in the room, actually, along with the designer as they move forward in designing a project. What kinds of actors, for example, have been historically missing in the design process? How do we think in very concrete terms about bringing communities into the design processes that are proposing solutions to the conflicts they face? How can we do that without their voices, without their histories? And we were so inspired by the proposals that we perceived. There was so much heart in them. You know, you put your finger on so many of the challenges that people are facing because of histories of injustice. Here in the United States, there are beautiful propositions as well as conflict zones across the world dealing with a broad range of challenges that our world is facing right now. So we were really inspired, and it was very, very difficult to arrive at the decision that we reached, but we're very excited about it. Do you want to say more about the brief?
Well, you've said it. Yes, you've said pretty much everything. But we definitely wanted to move architecture as a social medium to reconnect what has been divided, and to hopefully almost engage an impossible comprehensiveness. So framing the brief was fundamental in this case, the construction of an architecture of a conversation in a sense. If in our work, and again, as Fonna said, which is rooted, very embedded in a zone of conflict, urban conflict itself has been a creative tool. We've always really tackled the idea that no project can begin in the city without understanding the contested power relations that construct the territory. And so I think the visualization of conflict, which really pertains to the institutional mechanisms themselves and the actors that have constructed the crisis to begin with, often as an act of design, how to untangle the complexity. And that really was addressed by all the students who participated, and we thank you so much, because it's obviously the ultimate challenge of all of us as architects, I think, is how to manage complexity.
And to communicate complexity to those who you need to convince of the value of your project. It's the communication graphically.
So that's the reason at the end, the ultimate desire of the competition was that in conditions of crisis as today, an unprecedented moment, really, that we cannot wait for the client, we cannot wait for the brief, we cannot wait for the assembly or the type of economy or public support. In the absence of all of that, how do we advance design in its expanded field so that we can potentially, for a moment, design civic and political process? Who are the coalitions of knowledge that need to be assembled to tackle that problem? And why not to say it? How to construct a new political economy of urban development, to socialize housing and many other conditions. So the range of entries that we received cover almost all of those registers. The idea that we could be intervening in the designing of protocols, of social norms within contexts that are highly contested, urban borders, the interface between top-down infrastructure and bottom-up ecological reparation, and all of that as a point of entry to build a new sense of social reparation, how to reconcile global tourism. We saw a couple of projects that deal with that, with local histories. So many topics that were really part of. We had an amazing debate, an amazing conversation among the jury, about all of us here. So in essence, we wanted to thank everyone who participated in the competition for accepting the challenge, and really at the end of the day, really putting on the table fundamental topics that need to be debated, and all of which become the generative ground to rethink the role of design and architecture today.
We're excited to announce our 2026 winners.
No, the merit award, and again, really interesting project, produced a lot of conversation among all of us. The range of proposals in rethinking waste infrastructure, the negotiation of the planned and the unplanned. And the merit award goes to Omar Orlando Leon, whose project is called Informal Revolution. It's located in a very sort of peripheral, marginalized, informal community in Bogota, Colombia, and very close, in a sense, to the sensibilities of our work in many informal settlements in Tijuana at the border. And again, the challenges of how to rethink, how to think of the future of the city from its own periphery, to demystify, to open up other categories, other registers and scales of infrastructure, where communities participate in the transition from the ephemeral to the permanent. So we found in this project a beautiful set of reflections that speak of this topic of anticipatory infrastructure. We love the idea that in a place that lacks any waste management infrastructure, any, for that matter, any utility infrastructure, that there is an attempt to use infrastructure at a very informal bottom-up level as being the thread to begin constructing not only community, but really to summon top-down institutions to invest in those places of marginalization. So in this case, the project proposes to elevate the waste management utility infrastructure to begin threading a series of typologies across the informal settlement, connecting this peripheral zone with more formal, and established infrastructural zones in the city. So again, the negotiation of scales, we found there is a complexity there, from top-down infrastructure from planned to unplanned areas of the city. How is design really the interlocutor of stitching, of threading, and so on? So this is what really caught our attention, and that really can bring up these environments really as the laboratories for reimagining. These are the urban engines, let's put it this way, for reimagining the city from below. And we find a lot of promise in that.
And in our own work, we've actually learned quite a bit about informal urban development from Colombian cities over the years. One of the things we really loved about this project is by making the wastewater infrastructure visible in its elevation, it creates a cognitive sense of our collective challenges, and that the infrastructure is actually visually connecting our houses and our structures is very powerful from a human and behavioral perspective.
I get the pleasure of actually talking about a third prize. Once again, that my general comment is that all the brief that Teddy and Fonna put forward, and that was wonderful to discuss because it's probably the primary brief of the future, is how are we going to unmask the infrastructures that the modern project has put out of sight and out of mind, much to our detriment, and bring it up into our imaginations, and from which to move forward. So the idea of the conflict, that which has been buried and hidden from us, becomes the brief, is something we're all learning how to do in the next generation, a new, different modern project, let's say. I'm going to start with this project that Merv Benjamin at Boston Architectural College and his advisor, Sean Lynch, bravely jumped into. It's not for the shy. It's a project. I'll start with the geography, which I think is a very important global situation. Is that this project is located in the equatorial country of Africa, the Democratic Republic of Congo, which probably contains one of the richest ecological environments on the planet, maybe equal to that to the Amazon. In the midst of it, as we see in this picture, which I think is very important, which we'll spend a moment on, is the middle of the largest extraction of minerals, global extraction machinery, shifting the materials for the West technological hunger. All of the devices, AI, all the hot machines, data machines are being quarried out of this ecology. This group, and you see right at the beginning, is at the three arrows. There's the town of Kuisi. You see the town of Dilolo, and in the distance is the port of Lubumbashi on the Atlantic coast. Between that is a railroad line, moving the materials from the pit to the west. And in the middle, they thought that between Dilolo and Kuisi, they would create what they call a justice segment, where they say reverse the corridors, flow of extraction, the ecology of extraction, from mine to port, to a corridor that eats the commons, which is a very interesting statement, eats the commons that as the material being forced out, we are forced to address the fact that also, what is it that we're left with? And that these corridors are known as national assets. But how do we then reveal the privatization of value extraction and begin to understand how we make common making institution as a new valuating system? So they re-engineer the whole pipeline or train line into a set of mining cars, which mines imagination, where we begin to, as we pass through this corridor, to the next one. I think that actor and authority exist. Go to the next slide. In this corridor, where every other station, there's quarries on either side, up and down, and in the middle is the intersection where there is no quarry and mining concessions. And it's that place where we begin to reflect upon what it is that we are extracting and what is being taken from us and what comes back. So this line of conflicts becomes the line of imagination, where we are faced with what is happening. So small things like rejuvenating and regenerating the equatorial landscape through increments of repair in and around the center also reflects the larger issue of saving the country from further extraction. So as one goes along the line in these beautiful spaces, you're confronted by the authority of extraction to the left and the hope for a future of ecological relationships to the right. We sit on that boundary in the future, and the question as a world and as a country, and as we turn on our computers, we are always facing this line and decision of what's going forward. And I applaud these guys for building an incredible narrative about this unspoken and hidden world. Every time we open up our computer, this world is activated. So thank you.
One.
So I'd like to share the second prize winner with you. It takes a different geography, looking at Toronto's Chinatown. It's a project by Rui Kai from Toronto Metropolitan University, and it's a stunning scheme that demonstrates the continuity between urban analytics and the politics of conflict through urban design to architecture to the room. And the author, I think at every level, demonstrated how this program, in all of its complexity, could be addressed in a way that really shows architects how to think through the continuity of such an important and complex idea. Of course, there are Chinatowns across the world, and they each suffer from some of the same histories and the potential of some of the same futures. And this project really shows how, rather than preserving something like an ethnic enclave as a treasured historical event, its ongoing evolution of conflict, of legal contexts, of resident potential, and of the layered ways in which all of those together can make for a vibrant community and collective action. And the drawings are stunning. as is the analytics of the complexity. But here in this final drawing in particular, you can see how a kind of chain of small actions adds up to a collective power and an architectural triumph that would really render Toronto's Chinatown visible and strengthen its internal coherence and provide a kind of dignity that the community deserves. And I'll just say, in addition to that, I think in our debates, we were always looking for solutions where architecture became the lever by which social justice could be spatialized. And I think the Toronto's Chinatown and really Kai really showed how that's possible.
Wonderful. And so the first prize goes to Nikki Rhodes from the GSD. And thank you, Dana, for mentioning that, because the impossibility, again, of being comprehensive often in our field. I mean, but this project really shows the spirit of that, cutting across so many registers, scales, ultimately framing the problem beautifully. And by the way, I must say that it is that coherence from crafting the brief, obviously taking a position, which I would call taking a political position about the brief, and understanding that a process must unfold through that brief to understand how to summon, how to integrate, again, what has been unfortunately divided by institutional myopia and so on. So anyway, that coherence is really emblematic of this project, designing the political, economic processes potentially founded, framed particularly by the shaping of a cooperative at the municipal scale, the eco-social processes embedded in it, and again, the coalitions of care, as we call them in the brief, that must be summoned. The primary position here, which is very beautiful and very direct, is that waste is an opportunity. And as the brief opens up, that sanitation is a planetary design problem. And that really brings us back to really thinking more ecologically, more systemically, in a more circular way. So this relationship between human waste, nutrient, and food production, the localizing of waste infrastructure, even at the domestic space, but then the decentralization of it citywide, again, that speaks of that negotiation between the micro and the macro. And again, all of this embedded in a very grounded model of social cooperation. Well, what we loved about it too is that there is a commitment to the architectural dimension, the care for detail, these amazing prosthetics for waste management at the domestic space, all the way to a waste and composting center. That then is disseminated across the city, potentially in connection to orchards and other community-based initiatives for food production. So all of that really made this one of the most comprehensive and beautiful projects we saw. And I don't know how to say this, but as we were debating many of these issues, many of the entries, we obviously saw the impact, or the, how would I call it, of AI in the enhancing renderings and enhancing visualizations. We respected very much the commitment of Nikki, in this case, to really be present in his own project and the building of models. I don't want to sound awfully conservative here or nostalgic, but the physicality, the kind of articulation of these ideas through the crafting of these models, giving information to the designer that otherwise would be impossible to gain. So all of that made it even more compelling. The care and the commitment to the constructability of this. In fact, involving even an aesthetic dimension in the most rudimentary and banal of infrastructures, right? There is something.
Right.
So I think that, by the way, as much as we were looking for the types of provocations that really would reorient our field to really engage social and urban justice, we also believe in the power of aesthetics and the power of architecture as a medium to really rally the recognition, obviously, and the importance of our field to advance, to move the needle, so to speak.
it reminds me, the part of the conversation really about embodiment and material change is something that we were happy to see in a few of the entries. And it's not an abstract issue. I think we all agree with that. And it was clear in these projects that were submitted that it's not abstract for those who submitted either. Like Teddy and Fonna, at my center, City Lab, we are really dealing with these projects and issues every day. So how we collectively, as a profession, as a discipline, advance the discussion and the implementation and the impacts of social justice work is a completely practical and tricky problem that I like to see in the solutions as being aesthetic and analytic and intelligent and mapping oriented, and the depth of the solutions were really encouraging.
And in this case, the potential scalability of the idea, which is absolutely beautiful. We loved obviously it's a very local project, but the potential for rethinking waste infrastructure in other places in the world and other places in the US was really compelling. I personally loved the title. It made me think of, good trouble, right? We need some good trouble right now. And, there's a lot of shit in the world, and it was great to see a project recognizing the potential of good shit.
We should end with those words, but there is something else, Nikki, if you are listening, that we wanted to say. Obviously, the Lyceum Fellowship is a traveling fellowship. And as we were really looking and searching and seeking for the impossible comprehensiveness and the coherence of the proposal, moving across the analytic, the political, and the aesthetic, why not to say it? We were very, very impressed by your traveling brief, by your plans in terms of travel, and where that coherence was even further extended to use your traveling award to go and visit places, cities in the world where sanitation has been prioritized, to imagine it as a social thread. Was just really compelling. So please do it. Go to Japan and all the other places you suggested, and really bring back that report to us. I think imagine the fellowship being a point of entry into research, to come back to your work, so that I imagine in the future you will become one of the important voices in this topic. So we were very impressed by that.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
On behalf of the Lyceum Fellowship, again, thank you to our esteemed jury. It was really a wonderful day hearing the discourse. It was a lot more heated than what the symposium showed, but really fantastic. And also thank you to all the students who entered, to the schools, the faculty advisors that assisted in those applications. This year we had 80 entries from 16 schools of architecture. And lastly, we'll be announcing next year's program and a call for entries in the coming weeks. So we look forward to the 27 student design competition, which will be put online very shortly. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for having the family together, Thanksgiving, because we
Yeah.
rarely get together.
Yeah.
Yeah.